Welcome back, fellow dissidents. The entire world has erupted as within the last 7 days or so, give or take. Ye has set the internet on fire. The artist formerly known as Kanye West, and what is seemingly appealing to me about this isn't necessarily what he and the peripheral is doing and saying, but the reaction to it. And I think that's kind of the creative genius that is Kanye West, or Ye, forgive me. Um, he has this creative nature that makes everyone want to pay attention, right? And he has thoroughly and fully weaponized that. Now, the reason why the reaction to it appeals to me more than anything is because you see the factionalization of everybody watching. You've got the woke culture, you've got the neocons, you've got the supposed conservatarians or whatever they want to call them. The MAGA first. You got everybody wanting to react to this situation, and the different reactions are unique and telling. And first of all, I'd like to say that I was essentially wrong. Everybody, when they watched Ye walk off of Tim Pool, well, not everybody. There was a good amount of criticizing of Kanye West and of Tim Pool, and there was a lot of blame game. And my initial reaction to that situation was that Kanye West was emotional, and I stand by that. As well as, I'm a vociferous advocate of being a critic of people who are wrong, in my opinion. So that would make Tim Pool wander into my crosshairs quite regularly. He's a centrist, fence-sitting, a shill. I mean, there's no other way for me to say this. I watch his content regularly because he reports on the news, and while I don't agree with his opinions, the reporting itself is accurate, even though it may be biased in what it is. But I engage in watching content from all over the political spectrum. I don't believe you can have a diverse opinion on politics, geopolitics, or domestic politics for that matter, if you don't understand what everybody's trying to say. So yeah, of course I watch Tim Pool, and I am a vociferous advocate of his worldview, the fact that it leads to bipartisan authoritarianism. Now, having said all of that, I want to say this, and that is, I was wrong. I do believe that Kanye was, or Ye was emotional and walked out. I still don't believe it was Tim Pool's fault. When Milo and Ye in the last few weeks have been guests on Timcast IRL, they have both been able to get off their spiel and their stick uncompromisingly in the Timcast realm. What I mean by that is, this is the big criticism of Tim Pool, is that he's an egotist and he talks over his guests, and he runs his show how he sees fit. And while I applaud that part of it, I do agree with a lot of the criticism. He talks over his guests quite regularly. He's strongly opinionated for a centrist, and I understand the criticism, right? But this time, everybody used that criticism to blame Tim Pool. When now, after what I'm here to speak about, Ye on Alex Jones's InfoWars podcast or broadcast, whatever you want to call it, it's very clear that Ye is very lucid. That all the attacks saying that he's mentally disturbed or he's got mental health issues, he's having a mental health breakdown, mental. Let me just tell you right now, Kanye West is not mentally deficient. Emotional, yes, sure, maybe. We're all humans. We're all emotional to some degree. That's what makes us humans. We have consciousness and we have emotion, and we don't really know which either one are or how to control them properly, right? Because everybody's got their own opinion on what amount of emotionalism per se is acceptable within a polite society, right? So there's not even a doubt. And a lot of people, this is the funniest part about it, a lot of people are going to be commenting on this particular broadcast with have only seen the clips. I can guarantee it right now. Most people didn't do what I just did, and after I got out of work, I got myself together and I sat down and epiphany, I watched it. I watched the entire thing, and let me just tell you right now, that is a lucid human being. He knows exactly what he is doing. And that's where I was wrong in the aspect of Tim Pool's show, is that sure he was emotional, but he knew exactly what he was doing. I'm not even sure that Milo and Nick Fuentes knew what Ye was up to, but he did. And he even said quite blatantly, Tim Pool's already reported on this, and I'm assuming he didn't watch the whole thing, because Ye West particularly called out Tim Pool. Alex Jones asked Ye, now why is it that we're able to do a 3-hour long broadcast, and when it was with Tim Pool, you made it some 20-some minutes and you walked out? And he literally called out Tim Pool as being an NPC. And I would have to say I agree. I agree. He is the type of fence sitter, regardless of what you might think of Tim Pool. You know, I don't have any problems with critiquing him. Mine and his worldview align in some shapes and some fashions, but most certainly we don't agree. He regularly says that my worldview of an anarchistic capitalist society is just fairy tales. It's the thing of theory. It's not something that is tangible. It can't exist. And maybe he's right, but he says this with absolute authority. He says that the utopians are the anarchists, yet one of his best friends and best guests are Dave Smith and Michael Malice. So, you know, it's our worldviews don't align. I have no problem criticizing Tim Pool, but I had a particular interaction on Instagram after the Tim Pool show. Everybody that is in my circles was essentially blaming Tim Pool for it. And it's like, look, I understand Tim Pool is a hypocrite, right? He literally, Anomaly showed this absolutely perfectly. He was literally telling Kanye West, you can't criticize this particular faction as a generalization, and then went on to say that Antifa was made up of particularly white liberal people, right? Which is the exact same thing that he's telling Kanye West not to do. And that is the exact point that Kanye is, or that Ye is trying to make. Is that you can make these generalizations except for certain folks, right? And I seen a meme that somebody posted saying something to the effect that it was the Beanie's fault, right? And I said, no, and this is where I was wrong. I said, no, it went south because Ye walked out. He was emotional. But, I'm a vociferous advocate or critic of Tim Pool, and I watch his show regularly, but I would have to argue against him 90% of the time, even though we align on most of what he talks about, because he straddles the line of libertarianism until it gets to something cultural. Then he's got no opinion or whatever. But then, and the funniest part about it was, this is somebody who regularly this interaction I had on Instagram is somebody who regularly hashtags their stuff anarchism and liberty and blah blah blah. But then the minute that I said that none of this makes sense, Tim Pool deserves criticism, but he wasn't even pushing back. They were literally letting Ye say what he controlled the entire thing, and then the minute that he started to get pushed back, he got up and left. Right? So it can't be Tim Pool's fault. His whole shtick is, let's bring up a news article and then I will control the conversation. Both with Milo Yiannopoulos and with Ye West, he allowed them to control the conversation. This is unprecedented in Tim Pool's world, in Timcast. That's not how his show works. And that's one of the biggest criticisms of him, right? And I mentioned this. And then the only argument that I got back was that, well, look at my comment section. Everybody's saying it's Tim Pool's fault. I say, this is the biggest podcast in the world. Why does Tim Pool have to speak? Well, for one, it's his platform, and two, he did let him speak. Tim Pool was addressing the, when he said, Tim Pool used the colloquial term they for the corporate press. And West said, well, who's they? And he said, well, no, I mean they, the corporate press, right? And that's when he got up and walked out, right? But he knew exactly what he's doing the entire time. The entire time. So, in that regard, I was wrong. Because I thought it was just raw emotion that he's like, yo, I don't need this. What do I need? It's like he said, what does he need another Lex Friedman style podcast where y'all are going to, group together generalizations of demographics when it's convenient for you. But then when I say it about this one particular group of people, in particular the Zionists, the Jews, as they want to call them regularly or whatever, it's like, and the hypocrisy is blatant. I think that was what, I can only speculate. We can all only speculate on why he walked out on Tim Pool. I would speculate that it was because he wanted to show the hypocrisy that it's not winning no more. Real people only watch Tim Pool because of the people that are coming on. The people that are coming on Tim Pool are only going on because he's got reach. That it's not because Tim Pool is some kind of figure that they enjoy attaching themselves to, right? It's a platform. So now you've got the step from there, and this is exactly what Ye says in the Alex Jones interview. He was asked specifically about Tim Pool, and he replied with, Tim Pool is an NPC. And then and that brings us to the reaction and the feigning outrage from everybody, right? And it's really quite amazing. It really is. Because I don't know what is in that man's heart. But no matter who you ask right now, they say, look at my tribe and what they're saying. Look at the masses. They're right. They gotta be. This is my tribe. And it kind of seems like that's exactly what Ye is aiming for. It seems as though he's trying to break this paradigm of groupthink. Do I agree with the statements he made? Of course not. Of course not. I think that's the entire point. I can only speculate. TMZ immediately reported the thing on Alex Jones, the broadcast. They're reporting it as he's having a mental breakdown. We've seen this before in this man's history. This is part of the reason why I have a lot of empathy for him. He's had a lot of real trauma at the hands of state and corporate actors. I mean, that Harley Pasternak figure, he's been around a lot of these socialites, the people of Hollywood and such. He's a trainer, supposedly, but he's connected to the Canadian government, and he's openly spoken on interviews about using pharmaceuticals to alter the consciousness of military members and how they can and what effects they have. We'll just leave it at that. You can go look and you can watch it yourself. But this same man sent a text message to Kanye West, essentially saying, we can do this one of two ways. We can sit down, you can do it my way, I'll literally control everything you say, and you'll take your medication, or we'll institutionalize you again, and we'll force feed you lithium. Right? And this weird merger between corporation and state that it's implicit, it's overt. It's overt to anybody who's paying attention. This fascist cooperation between corporation and state that we have these days. I mean, it's so blatantly overt. But yet we're not allowed to talk about it. Why is that? Is that by design? Designed by who? And that's what they don't want you to ask. It's not about Jewish folks or Judaism. It's about the Zionist regime. It's not about white people or any demographic, particularly in the West. It's the Western nation states that are, the entire time, he never once said who he hated. He never once said that he hated this person or that person. He even went to the extent of saying that he loved people in the name of Jesus Christ. Now, anybody who knows me or has watched any amount of content by me, they know that I may be, while I am spiritual in some sense, and I do believe that the universe has a design to it. I'm not religious. I'm not a theist. I don't believe in a book, right? But this idea that he can say that he loves somebody, even like Hitler, the wild, the most wild thing in today's society, in a society that claims that their foundational document is based on the precedents of free speech, right? A man is relegated to the corner of the social platform, but yet still his incendiary remarks go global in an instant. Is that not the point? Is his strategy not working? Correct me if I'm wrong, but his raw emotion in walking out on a centrist like Tim Pool, taking it to somebody with a group of people, all these, they had Lauren Loomer, Nicholas Fuentes, they had, I forget all of their names, but Owen Schreier, right? Alex Jones. All of these names that are supposed to be pushed into the dustbin of history, never to be seen from again, right? And yet this man, everything that he says, everything that he does, it exudes contrarian. Why? Why is everything he's saying so contrary to popular belief? Only when he's acting in an incendiary nature is what he's saying, I guess, not acceptable, for lack of a better way to say it. I don't agree with some of the things that he said. He said some factual inaccuracies, but a lot of what he said was his opinion, or it was maybe even satire, and I could almost guarantee some of it was hyperbole, right? But what does that mean? Does that mean he's not allowed to speak? Why exactly is the entire media apparatus running with something's wrong with his brain? Why is that? Why do they want the world to think that when a man says something that he believes, that he must absolutely be crazy and the ideas just can't even be spoken about? Even if it's not illegal, technically, in that sense, yet. Why is it that the entire machine starts churning to bury it under propaganda and narrative? And why is it that his words are still breaking through the Overton window and shattering that narrative? Isn't it amazing? Isn't it astounding that we are living through a paradigm shift, but you can't see these things except for retrospectively, unless you're actively paying attention. If you're actively paying attention, nothing that I'm saying is true or is it's not sensational. It doesn't sound like hyperbole. It makes a lot of sense, I would imagine. If you have your eye on the ball, you know that what that man just did will be talked about for a while. And why? Why? Why is it that just a name attached to words that are sensational can make such an imprint on the culture? And how is it that he knew that this was going to happen? Maybe it's because he's been part of the culture for a long time. Maybe it's because he sees the degeneracy that we have in this country. Why is it that we live in a world where they can literally stop the puberty on a small child, chop parts of their body off, and then push them out to the masses as this is your new normal? But what this man's saying can't be allowed into the public sphere. How is it that we're at a point where you can do it? I'm the most libertarian person you'll ever meet. I don't care what you do, as long as you don't impose it on other folks. The rest is application. Right? Yeah? But why is it that in today's day in society, if anything is deemed politically incorrect, you are relegated to the fringes of culture, politics, society, all that. Why is it that a man who says that he believes that Christ is king and that we need to put our families back together and in order and stop killing each other, he's not allowed to be talking to folks? How do we get to the point where our children are indoctrinated on a daily basis and more people are worried about the mental state of a celebrity than their own children? Or if they are paying attention to their children, they're doing very nefarious things for whatever ends. They have hijacked every institution across the West. And it's funny, too. Another part of it was Nick Fuentes, whatever you may feel about him, right? He said he was pro-Putin. Literally, that was his verbatim. He said, I am very pro-Putin, right? And while I disagree, I'm not pro-Putin. Obviously, he breaks the non-aggression principle. That's a disqualifier in my book. So while I disagree with him, why is it that he's the first person since this war took off that I've heard somebody openly espouse and say, I am pro-Putin? That just doesn't seem right to me. Because I understand what the West has done. I understand what NATO has done. I understand what Russia has done. I understand both sides. But in today's society and culture, you're either supposedly neutral and just think we need to talk about peace, and that relegates you to pro-Putin. They'll call you pro-Putin. Or you're for Ukraine indefinitely. Right? Why is it that there is no opinion from the other side? While we may disagree with it, why is it that we never see it? And is that not the point of a paradigm shift? I'm not saying that we should agree with Putin. What I'm saying is we should advocate for peace. But the fact that the narrative is constantly and always in one direction, that would indicate that there's a pattern, an agenda, if you will. And if there is an agenda, certainly it's a human behind this agenda, or some group of humans. Who is this group? Who designs this agenda? Who tells us that our kids are cannon fodder? Who tells us that the people all across the globe are our enemies and we must pour our life into it, our life and our treasure and our blood and our children into foreign excursions? Who is it that creates this agenda that says that our kids aren't only cannon fodder, but they are the test experiments of elites? Who gets to control this agenda? Who gets to make this agenda? Why is it that most people just fall in line or just fall back? Why is it that a regular machinist has to work 12 hours a day, get off and talk shit on the internet just because he feels like he needs to do something? Why are so many people compelled to watch this broadcast and to somehow make sense of it for folks who are just going to fight and call him an anti-Semite? You know, I have watched, I listen. I don't watch a lot of podcasts, but I listen to a lot of news, culture, and politics while I listen to it while I'm at work, because I work with machines, and so long as the spindle's moving, I can listen to whatever I want. So I hear a lot. I hear a lot of the narrative, and sometimes it's black, sometimes it's gray, sometimes it's white. But it's always a narrative, the same narrative. Maybe different skews, different views, different perspectives from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different demographics. But it's always a narrative. And it's never a narrative that quite lines up with what I see as the truth. Why is that? And why is it that so many people that I know, my tribe, why is it that we all see it the same way? And why is it that there's this faction that aligns, that sees it in some form or fashion close to that? But then when it comes to somebody like Kanye West, it just all fractures and says, nope, this is not allowed, no matter what part of the spectrum. And then somehow, even the people that are aligned with me and see things to more or less how I do, somehow there's infighting all of a sudden. Like what happened on Instagram the other day with me. I have a disagreement about whether or not Tim Pool is the devil of this magical podcast, right? And I say, no, he wasn't. And they say, oh, look at the masses. Ah. Why is that everybody's default thing when they're challenged on their ideas? Their first thing is not logic and reason. And as a matter of fact, I said, well, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree. Your logic doesn't sound, in my opinion. And he laughed. He said, look at what everybody's saying and liking on this post. Your logic ain't sound, LOL. Yeah, no, it wasn't. And I was right. I was proven right. Ye essentially said that he went on Tim Pool to prove he was an NPC. Not verbatim, that's not what he said, but that was the implication. Everything that he said had an underlying message in it. That was the whole point. Saying incendiary and hyperbolic things, but never anything about hate. Everything about what we could do to fix it, bringing, loving people, having family and peace. Sure, he said a lot of incendiary things that I don't agree with. Sure. But isn't that the point? Isn't that the point? You know, I find it difficult that we live in a world that claims that everybody, especially in the circles that I run with, this is supposed to be the spot where people think for themselves. We have all heterodox opinions. Almost 99% of the world agrees that we need a nation state. And I run in circles of anarchists, all kinds of black flag flying people that say that we don't agree. We believe that society can work. We believe in the human consciousness. We believe in the human spirit. We believe in liberty. We believe that humans can govern themselves, right? But the minute that you disagree with the narrative in that particular circle, everybody starts infighting. And nobody's a libertarian, and nobody's a real anarchist, and oh, look at my tribe. It's amazing, isn't it? Isn't that why this entire thing was so sensational? We see the hypocrisy baked in every single faction. I don't ever claim that I am some arbiter of morality or truth. I literally talk shit on the internet because I believe that I have stumbled upon a philosophy that I want the world to hear. And maybe if I can just reach one or two, or who knows, maybe this thing takes off and we tell a lot of people. Who knows? I just feel like we need to talk about it, right? But somehow, even in that circle, there's some balkanization at points. It's kind of a spectacle, really. It's like it's not something that you can really put in words when you witness something like this. Like, people will share a majority of ideas, but for some reason, when it becomes tribal, people do all kinds of things that really just don't make logical sense. They stop being friends with people. They disavow their family. They take to social media to laugh, ridicule, mock, unfollow, unfriend, block type things. And it's like, I understand, certain people who are just trolling or, spamming or whatever, the obvious bots, the person that's always got something negative to say but has 0 followers and no profile picture, right? We all know that the block button is there for those folks, right? But when you have a constant presence in certain circles and then you disagree and all of a sudden you're supposed to be not part of that circle because you have a heterodox opinion amongst heterodox opinions, I just find it amazing. Especially with this call to anti-Semitism as of lately. It's like everybody in today has their victim card, right? And you've got, this is the whole intersectional progressive idea, right? That there's a hierarchy. They say they hate hierarchy, but the progressives have a hierarchy, and it is intersectionality, and it has changed, and it will always change because that's how they control folks, right? But even the neocons, even the conservatives, even the libertarians, even the anarchists, they all eventually get to this point where your victim card runs out, and then there's one group that just nobody's allowed to talk about. Hands off, not allowed to talk about them. And it's funny too, because I don't agree with collectivism. I don't agree with identitarianism. I don't believe in racism, which is inferior or superior due to race or ethnicity. I don't agree with these ideas, right? But nevertheless, there is collusion among factions, whether they be nation states, corporations, or central banks. And you can only criticize so far. And I find it amazing. Like, take Whitney Webb, for example. Whitney Webb is a terrific example because she doesn't. I would like to think that she's like a civil libertarian type, kind of lefty leaning, I would assume. I don't know her politics exactly, but I'm well familiar with her work, though. And her work is spectacular, for lack of a better word. And her research is so dense that when you read it, it's dizzying. I just finished her One Nation Under Blackmail, the sordid collusion that rose to Jeffrey Epstein. And she starts from the 1940s and works her way all the way up, essentially, to Epstein and his arrest and shortly after. And it's like she has thoroughly detailed, documented, strong source information on how the Zionist regime and the U.S. establishment and all the way into the Soviet Union and Ukraine and the European Union, the entire web of organized crime, intelligence, central banks, the whole nine, and how they collude with each other, the sex trafficking, the exploitation of minors and pedophilia, and it's like it's well documented. If you care to do the research, you can read people who will show you the way. But this is why the mainstream narrative, like Epstein, for example, Whitney Webb has beyond a doubt exonerated any thought that there's it's only child exploitation taking place among Epstein, or the fact that he was some kind of head honcho for the movement. That's not the case, right? But the narrative in the mainstream is that he was an anomaly, he's dead now, and everything's fine. They don't take a look at his financial crimes. They don't take a look at where his initial billions came from, the fact that who he was tied to through Iran-Contra and such, his ties to Robert Maxwell, the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell is eating tofu turkey for Thanksgiving and playing tennis in Camp Fed, right? You would think the person who's more near the top would stay alive and the person doing the dirty work would die or get busted. So what does that tell you about Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein? The fact that Ghislaine Maxwell is still alive is very significant. The fact of who her father was, if you know anything about that, he ended up off the side of the boat, according to Ghislaine Maxwell. She thinks her father was killed, right? But the mainstream narrative is the mainstream narrative. Most regular folks think Jeffrey Epstein was terrible. Sure, of course he was. And he was an anomaly. It's amazing. Which brings me back to the narrative that was being smashed by Ye. He talked extensively about the pedophilia among Hollywood, the establishment, the Zionist regime, all of it. He tied it to Balenciaga and the whole nine. That was disgusting. Balenciaga just had to take down a bunch of their social media posts and stuff. Supposedly they didn't know, and they're suing the creative director of these ads. But these ads had children in not compromising positions, but they were holding BDSM bears, and they had court documents scattered throughout the picture that was a court case pertaining to child sex trafficking and pedophilia, right? And they also had yellow cop tape on the ground that misspelled Balenciaga, and it said Baal, and Baal is the ancient deity that was essentially a demon and engaged in child sacrifice, human sacrifice, right? And he said all of these things on Alex Jones. They talked about a lot. All you're going to hear is mental breakdown, anti-Semitism, and he's crazy. We cannot allow this. But he said so much more than that. And that was the entire point. Yet you're going to have the entire internet having an opinion, having only seen the clips. And isn't that just a perfectly wrapped up package with a tiny little bow on it, set right in front of you as what is society today? Everybody's so damn opinionated. Everybody's got an opinion on everything. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. I have an opinion too. My opinion just happens to be that everybody opines on things that they have no idea what they're talking about. Thus why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I normally don't talk about drama, but I don't believe this will be drama. It is drama, sure. And most people will try to construe it as such. Oh, it's just a celebrity talking, right? We are in the middle of a paradigm shift. Things will either go incredibly totalitarian, or they will crash and burn, and out of the ashes will arise something different. I don't claim to know what these things will be, but it's either really, really bad or really, really good. But indefinitely, what's happening now, whether you're talking about economically, societally, culturally, none of it's sustainable. And I mean that in like a factual, literal sense. The economic stuff, the Federal Reserve is the largest Ponzi scheme in human history. That's not sustainable. Our culture has literally told us to sterilize, indoctrinate, and abort our children. That's obviously, factually, not sustainable. Societally, we have organized ourselves into centralized nation states that control everything we do, say, talk, or feel, opinion, all that. They control all of it. Whether you think so or not, they are in fact controlling the entire apparatus. That's not sustainable. None of it's sustainable. It will stop at some point. That's the only thing that's guaranteed. There's two things that are guaranteed in life. One is change, and one is death. But indefinitely, we are seeing changes right now. I don't claim to know or claim to be a prophet who knows what this future looks like. And I happen to believe that human beings not only have consciousness, but we have free will. So if we have free will, that means we can dictate our own future. So that means we can change things for the better. But what I can guarantee, in my own humble opinion, none of this is sustainable. None of it is fundamentally reformable, and it will collapse. And in fact, we are watching it collapse in real time. There's not a serious person on this entire planet that believes that Joe Biden is actually calling the shots for Washington, D.C. and the United States of America. If you believe so, I got a bridge in London to sell you. Real good one, too. Nobody believes that. But yet we still just trudge along with this same old narrative that we need to just elect someone different. If Joe Biden is shitting his pants with a blanket over his lap, sundowning in the White House, what makes you think that we have any control over any of that? We don't. They use vote. I don't even have to talk. That's the beautiful thing about the way that I see how things are in this country. Change is going to happen within inside of you and your life. That's why I lean heavy agorist. For one, They only use voting as a legitimization tool. It gives them some type of, we have to cede them moral legitimacy as we walk in and choose our slave masters. I don't do that. I don't knock anybody if they vote. If you personally believe that we can vote our way out of this, be my guest. I choose liberty in my own life. That's what I try to advocate for things and teach people a different way. It's that simple. And that only goes so far. I can point people in the right direction. I can say certain things online. But all of that comes to a stop at a certain point, right? But this democracy and even the idea of a democratic republic, right? A constitutional republic. All of these ideas were handed down from generation to generation with different iterations by landed aristocracies that are of the oligarchy. All in attempts to cull the public. We know better than you. We'll give you a little bit of freedom here, a little bit of freedom there. Dangle the illusion of freedom in your face and keep you chasing the carrot. Until we cut the carrot off of the string, trip the tyrant off of the cliff, and claim liberty for ourselves, we are stuck in this perpetual tyranny. Look at China. Even China's protesting. Those people are protesting at the fear of death and gulags. So obviously the tyranny is getting pretty damn strict over there. And a bunch of them agree with it. There's a whole bunch of regular Chinese people who agree with communism, just that version, which is essentially fascism, like every modern nation state. But they agree with it to some extent. It's just gotten too tyrannical. And that is the tippy-toe balance that the elites have to do to project this illusion on everybody. They have to legitimize it to a certain, because even the dictators, they rest on public opinion. A minority cannot rule over a majority unless the majority agrees with what the minority is doing. To some extent, it will break. You can only choke someone until they start fighting for their own life again. Not everybody agrees with this. Some people will walk into the gulag with a smile saying, "Yes, comrade." But there is an essential yearning for humans to innovate, create, build, experiment, be free. You got to be free to do any of those things. And that's what, I may not agree with everything that Ye said, but I believe that's what he's trying to aim for. They tried to take that man's life away. They did, essentially, and he kept on pushing. He kept on pushing. And you're going to hear so many people that say, if you say anything positive about Ye from this point forward, you are what he is. And a lot of people will accept that. Even your Ben Shapiro's, your Charlie Kirk's. I'm seeing Tim Pool trying to walk that line in the center, and oh boy, is it great. Because I'm free. I know who I am. The people who listen to me know who I am. I don't have to put on this fake perp in front. I don't have to walk this line. I can say whatever I want, and sure, the social media will pull me down, but somebody will host it. That's the beauty of the marketplace. So, if you take anything out of what I've just said, my opining, my conjecture on the situation, just all I say is keep your eyes open. Watch the reactions of how people, don't even, say what you want, have your opinion, I have mine, everybody's entitled to one, but enjoy the reaction. Nobody can deny that Ye is a very creative person. He told everybody he was a snowball, and he was going to keep on rolling. When they call him an anti-Semite, he picked that up, kept rolling, got bigger. And he rolled right over NPC Tim Pool, verbatim his own words. And everybody's got their opinion on it. But the entire political establishment is unified in saying that he's having a mental breakdown, he's not lucid, and you cannot associate, listen, or agree with him. And a lot of people will have their opinions, and it will be based off of what other people are saying. And you can see it in rotation, full rotation, just like my interaction on Instagram the other day. It's a beautiful thing. Because when you are an actual critically thinking, heterodox thinker, not a contrarian, not saying the opposite just to say the opposite, but you actually have your own original thoughts, those people, sit back and watch. Enjoy the show. Because the paradigm is, in fact, shifting. And it's fun. It's fun watching the supposed critical thinkers follow along with the rest of them. I'll leave you with that. By all means, if you like it, please like, share, subscribe. I'll catch you on the next one.